Okay, so I will get straight into my introduction and then we'll take it from there. So here we go. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. With me today is a legend from Toowoomba Podiatry. It's Judi France. How are you doing this morning, Judi?
I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm fine otherwise.
You are fine otherwise? A lot of people come on the podcast and they will normally say, I'm a little bit nervous. And I'll admit sometimes even I am when I go to do this. You just want to, I think what nerves are really just, you know that you want to perform well. Yeah. And you want to give value to whoever's listening. So I don't get nervous so much when I have a guest on because I've got somebody else to bounce the ideas off. But when I do solo episodes, yeah, sometimes I'm a bit on edge about what I'm going to actually say. So you're a QUT graduate from 1983.
Yes, back in the bad old days.
Bad old days. I started at QUT in 1985. So I wasn't that far behind you. So what got you into podiatry? Before we get on to today's topic, which I'm going to let everyone know, today's topic is about educate yourself to invest outside of podiatry. So this is going to be a great topic to talk about. And we've spoken about wanting to talk about this for a while, but what got you into podiatry in the first place?
Oh, I got into podiatry by default. Had you asked me in high school what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, it would have been optometry. And I didn't have a high enough T score. So I looked at and because optometry and podiatry were sharing the first year subjects, basically. Yeah. I decided to take up the offer to go into podiatry, then look at perhaps swapping over to optometry later on, having done that actual basic first year. I think the only difference between us was where we did more like, it used to be called chiropody back then. We did a chiropody subject once or twice a week. While we did chiropody, the optoms did optics. So I think that was basically the only difference within first year.
Yeah, I know when I went through, I think the first year was podiatry, optometry, med lab science, and radiography. I think we all did our subjects, certain subjects we all did together. And it gave you that ability that if you wanted to switch, you had, I think you were like, half a year ahead instead of having to go right back to the start again.
Yes, that's right.
So once you got into podiatry, what you realized that you didn't want to be talking to people all day saying, is that better? Or is that better? Is that better? Or is that better?
No, I think that I found that I actually did really quite enjoy podiatry. I had the option at the end of first year of doing the swap. I did fail one of the podiatry subjects in first year that I did need to repeat the second year.
Yeah.
So instead of the 3-year course, it actually took me 4 years to do. But in spite of that, I decided that I actually quite liked podiatry.
Okay. What was the subject you failed, by the way?
Oh, I can't remember, to be honest now. I think it was actually clinical chiropody.
That's funny.
I remember, it is funny because I can remember Mike Ablock before our practical test warned everyone, if you have a hem, don't disguise it. And anyway, of course, being a little bit nervous, so I had a hem and I put a little tiny bit of cotton wool over it. And I think that was the reason that I actually failed that component. But not just me, quite a few did, including Jackie Christie, who's been out as long as what I have.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was her failing that year as well. I think that there was 4 or 5 of us, but it's amazing all that group of people that did fail that subject. How many have actually are still within the profession?
Well, it's funny. I failed the same subject, and even though I didn't believe I failed, it was. But I'm glad I did. But I didn't fail it until my final year. So I'd got all the way through. Final year, failed it in the final year. And even though I still don't believe I failed it, having to go back that extra year made such a difference. And I remember talking to Alan Crawford when he failed me. And when he sort of explained to me why he failed me, even though he said I knew the stuff, but in his words, he reckons I was a bit of a smart ass, surprisingly. But the year I went back, the end of that year, I actually thanked him for making me stay an extra year, because I learned so much in that final year, because it was the only subject I was there for, which I feel made me a better podiatrist. Just that it was so good it was good to actually get the kick in the pants that I needed.
I think that that also, with the group that I was going through, I was probably the smarter end, if you know what I mean, at the time. And so perhaps we did need a bit of a kick in the backside early on to make us actually appreciate it. But it just goes to show perseverance pays.
Yeah, and I think failure, sometimes people can be hit with failure and they let it pretty much crumble them. Yeah, they're a mess afterwards and they can't recover. Whereas I've always looked at failure as an opportunity to learn something from it.
Exactly.
And then do it the right way. So I repeated grade 12. Yeah, when I went through high school, got the end of grade 12, I was going to be an art teacher, decided at the end of grade 12 not to be an art teacher, to do podiatry. So I had to go back and repeat grade 12 to do all the right subjects. So a lot of things I've done, I've not done it right the first time, but going back and doing it the second time has made a huge difference.
Oh, it does. As a parallel to that, I repeated year 11. My father died beginning of year 9. I was the eldest of 4 children, and and basically the wheels fell off my first year of year 11, and so I had to go back and repeat year 11 again. I was extremely fortunate at that stage. The end of year 9, I had to go cap in hand to Miss Gray, who was the principal then of Somerville House, and say, look, my mum can't afford to keep me here.
Yeah.
Any chance I can stay here? And I was a good solid student. I made sure that my socks were up and my shoes were polished. And yep, they let me stay there till the end of year 12 in spite of 2 years of year 11.
Geez, we have a lot of similarities. Yeah, my dad died when I was in grade 12 as well. Oh, yours was grade 11. And same thing, for me to repeat, I had to go to the principal and convince him to let me come back.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, there's a lot of, this is what I love about this podcast, is I've known you for a while now, and it's not until you start, these aren't the sort of conversations that I think a lot of podiatrists have with each other, which I think they should. A lot of the times we're looking at, you'll be at a conference and you might have, say, Rob Herman, for example, and he's been on the podcast, but you could be at a conference with Rob Herman, sitting across the room with Simon Bartold, and you're normally talking about what they're doing now or what the future plans are. Rarely do podiatrists sit down at a conference and say, by the way, Simon, by the way, Rob, why did you get into podiatry? I think we should be asking each other that question. I think we can learn a lot about each other.
Actually, that might be a good question for interviewing prospective podiatrists to come to work for you too.
Yeah, well, yeah. I used to ask people, I'd ask let me get that right. I said I stuff things up and then I normally have to edit things out. See, told you, you don't have no problems at all. You don't need to worry about anything. It's me that makes most of the mistakes. When we were doing interviews, we always asked that question, why podiatry? And it was interesting, some of the answers you get.
Yep, no doubt it would be. Yeah.
Some were not the ones you were expecting. So once you did podiatry, you went through QUT, you enjoyed it. Did you work for someone first, or did you just go and set up for yourself?
No, I just went straight into private practice. And really back then there was no choice as far as you had to go into private practice straight off the bat. I did apply for a position at Eventide Nursing Home in Brisbane, which was at Sandgate. I grew up at Coorparoo, and so that would have been a 50-minute drive each way. But because I never thought that I would be self-employed. My dad was an accountant and he was self-employed, and I saw the ups and downs as far as finances go.
Yeah.
And my dad, in spite of being a really good accountant, was a bit of a spendthrift, and so I just feared not having a regular income. But as fate had it, I was waiting for the government process to go through, which took a while, and my mum noticed just a little ad within the Courier Mail that Toowoomba Garden Settlement up here in Toowoomba needed a podiatrist 1 day a week. Toowoomba Garden Settlement is a aged care facility nowadays. It's Blue Care, and they provide like a therapy centre for residents of Toowoomba there as well, which has physio, occupational therapy, all the usual things that a therapy centre has. So I came up and started working one day a week, and then I was getting all of these phone calls to say, hey, can you work here? Can you work there? Mainly aged care, mind you, and also one of the medical practices here in Toowoomba. So it very, very, very quickly grew to a 3-day-a-week practice.
Okay, that's good. So with podiatry back then, back in the day, when we first started out, and like when you graduated, QUT was actually QIT.
That's right.
When you graduated, was it a podiatry? Was it called podiatry, or was it called chiropody back then?
No, I think that ours was the first year that it was actually called podiatry on our degree.
Okay.
Francisca Charteris, who's a friend of mine, she graduated. She was one of the original graduates, and her piece of paper still has diploma of chiropody on it.
All right. And I know the year that I graduated in '88 was the year it switched from QIT to QUT.
Yes.
So a lot of it changed very quickly over that period of time. So when you finish, and so you've set up your own business, but recently, well, in more recent years, you went and did your therapeutics.
Yes.
Course. Well, why did you choose to do that?
Quite a few factors. Because we're in the regional area, we often get to see things that are quite acute, because people come into Toowoomba from Western Queensland, Northern Territory. Basically it's a major health hub here.
Yeah.
And one particular incident inspired my my quest to get prescribing rights, and that was, I had quite an intelligent guy. He was a structural engineer who was working on a project up in Northern Territory, and he rings up on Thursday before Good Friday that he'd just flown back into Brisbane Airport, and he had this terribly painful corn underneath his foot. That was his description to this terribly painful corn underneath his foot. He comes in about 4 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon, and he has got this rampant forefoot infection. He was not a well-controlled type 2 diabetic. The bush nurse where he was up on this remote part of Northern Territory had been trying to dress this ulcer that on his third toe of his left foot, and he had a raging infection, and he had the third toe was twice the size it should have been. The whole forefoot was inflamed, and I'm trying to explain to this guy, who is neuropathic, obviously, that no, you have got a major problem here. You need to go and see your GP. Because at that stage I didn't realise that we could just put them straight over to emergency departments. Yeah. And try to get a GP on a Thursday afternoon before a public holiday. They all go up to Noosa, to the breeding ground. So I mean, they're already men, so it left me in a real dilemma what to do with this guy. So I managed to find an appointment with a GP I didn't know, that didn't even take off any of the dressings, and just wrote out a script for an oral whatever. And of course, he became a lot worse during the night and ended up in emergency the next day. But it's not uncommon when you're in rural practice too, that you can be you'll see things that require prescribing an antibiotic. For example, that the patient can't get in to see their doctor in a timely fashion, and so the actual GPs quite like the fact that we can prescribe. I mean, usually ring them up and say, oh, I've got Mrs. So-and-so here. She's got this terribly infected corn on top of her toe. Do you mind if I start her on a course of, 1 gram of Keflex and, twice a day for 5 days. And I think that just the fact that you're speaking on the GP's level and you know what the patient's background is, that you can assess a patient more freely, because you've got a much broader understanding of their whole medical condition too.
Yeah. So when did you actually complete that?
I completed the actual grad certificate in podiatric therapeutics, I think it was 2005. But then that was another story too, because that was an incident in which I didn't pass one final subject as well. So
which made you better once again.
Go back and do, yeah, that's right. So I had to go back. I think that what had happened was the problem with actually doing it at that stage was you had to run around and find 40 case histories to submit. And so you used to like ghost the patients when they went to their GPs and introduce yourself. And as a result, I picked up some potentially bad prescribing habits actually from GPs around the place. And so instead of forming my own opinion, I was just going with what they had, thinking that they were more experienced in that particular field of prescribing. But I think that basically I just needed to form my own opinion. I mean, going by the therapeutic goods guidelines, as well as, you know, Australian Medical Handbook.
Yeah, well, at least once again, you didn't let it kill you that you sort of went, oh no, maybe I'm too old to be doing this. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. You learned from it. And you also realized too that not every GP and every script that they write is a good one. No,
that's about right. But kudos to my husband too for giving me a kick up the backside every so often, because there was times in which I was just going to give it up as a bad joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's good. Like I said, I think adversity is good. Yeah, adversity is good, and people can learn. Anyone listening to this can learn that adversity is good. But you also did a Masters of Health. Why did you choose to do a Masters of Health?
Oh, I don't know. I had this fleeting dream. Oh, this is going back about 20 years ago. That I wanted to slip out of private practice and go be a public servant. And I thought, oh, what would give me a really good grounding? And so I did this Masters of Health it's a Masters of Rural and Remote Health. And again, it was quite interesting too, because you get to see things from quite a different perspective.
So what subjects did you fail on that one?
None.
Hey, there we go, all the way through.
And I actually spun off a graduate certificate in gerontology. Sorry, a graduate diploma in gerontology, because my final year I had to cross enroll and other subjects that I was taking at the uni I was interested in me, and so I did that through UNE down in Armidale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that's basically gerontology is the study of old people within society. Yeah.
But what's interesting with all the study that you did is at the same time you were still building your podiatry business.
Yes.
And I know some people, when they have their business, don't necessarily go and do a master's degree or further education in certain things because they're so tied up in the business and they don't have the time to do it. So how did you find the balance between practice ownership and doing continuing education or doing more study?
I think it was hard at the time, particularly as we still had the farm out at Allara, and we had three young boys at that stage. What I really helped me to get studying was I've got a husband that likes the TV, and he likes the TV loud because being a typical ex-farmer, he's deaf in one ear, and so you've got to have the TV up loud, and also you've got to channel surf incessantly. And so I thought I've got to do something more useful with my time at night. So after putting the boys to bed and getting them ready the next day, I used to sit down and do my studying. And then because I don't sleep that well anyway, I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning before. Yeah. That's the best time of the day because it's lovely and quiet and no one's going to annoy you. And study then as well.
Yeah, I found that when I wrote my book. It's no secret there's money in podiatry if you do not have a copy of it. And it was the same thing. You should have a copy. When I wrote that, it was the same thing. I got up at 4 a.m. every morning and I'd write from 4 to 7 because it was 7 o'clock when everybody else started to move around. And it's amazing when it's really quiet, just how your thinking is completely different to when there's distractions. So let's move ahead. You had your own business, you built it up, you did extra study. Now, where you're talking from right now that I can see you're in a house. So at what point did you decide to buy your own building? Now we're moving on to the topic of what we were going to talk about is investing outside of podiatry.
When I first started my practice, I was in this really little dodgy shop front down in a place called Schofield Street, which is in the CBD, and it actually wasn't too bad. It was a tiny little shop, but it was level. It had parking right out the front, but then it soon became pretty obvious that it was getting too small.
Yeah.
And we looked at renting some places and around Toowoomba, and then this house just on the CBD fringe came available that already had medical zoning. A couple of obstetrician gynecologists had sold it to another guy who was an optometrist, but he was going to rent it out for residential. But somewhere along the line that it still had the medical zoning on it, but he had a change of heart or whatever, and so I ended up buying there first of all. And what we found that when the boys were starting to go to school in Toowoomba, that we'd be sort of living half the week out at the farm at Ella, which was 65 k's away, and half the week in Toowoomba, in the back of where I was working.
Yeah.
Never, ever a good idea, dear, because you have patients, that arrive at 6:30 in the morning. Oh, yes, the bus got into town early, or my sister dropped me in early or whatever. And even though they might have had a 9 o'clock appointment, they thought they should have been entertained. And when you're trying to get 3 young boys off to school, it just does not work. So I never ever work from home unless you've got like a separate entrance, or it looks as though it's a separate entity just all together.
Yeah, I have made that mistake. I had my clinic in a house. I was living in the same house, and it'd be a Sunday and I'm out there just watering the yard, and a car would pull up because they saw you there, and they'd get out of the car, walk up your driveway and go, I was wondering if I could make an appointment. Yeah, and you're there in a pair of thongs and a singlet, and you go, I'm watering the yard. So and you can never get away from the place. So it is difficult. So with the so how many years were you working before you decided to buy the property you're in now?
1998 was the year I bought it. I think I was only about 6 years over in the other property, and what had happened was we decided that we needed a house to live in properly while we were in town, and separate the business away from it. And then I bought this building here off Dr. Pat Murray, who is a retired physician.
Okay.
And we moved into the other house, which is beautiful location. It's opposite Queen's Park, and you can walk to town. At that stage, the boys were all up at Toowoomba Prep, and within 5 minutes drive of school. And basically bought this place and started practicing there here in 1998. And then we used the place over in Godsall Street to basically live out of. We were in there for a little while and realised we had an old house falling down around our ears, basically. And so a couple of years later, we renovated the whole lot. Okay,
so you had the original. So the first investment was the house that you then lived in for a while, and then the next investment was the new practice that you're in now.
Yeah, but that's beside our other property investments, because because we've always been investing into residential plus other commercial properties.
Yeah, so did you do that before you bought your own practice? Were you investing in real estate and other things before you built the first property and started for your practice?
Yes, I did. What had happened was I've always made a point of with our first house that we were living in, of actually paying it off quick, and we paid it off within like 2 years. And so you're in the habit of living lousy, basically, and paying off debt quick. So
before we go any further, I think there's a really, really important point there for young podiatrists listening to this, is when you're starting to make money. And I know it's interesting when you go from a student with no money to all of a sudden a podiatrist, even if you're getting paid lousy money, doesn't matter where you're working, that lousy money is still better than the money you had as a student. Sometimes the excitement of having that money, you can burn through it really quickly. You're going, at the moment, not probably traveling as much as we normally would, but it's really easy to just blow the money really fast. And what you said then about just living, like really living within your means and paying off debt fast.
That's basically it. So what we did after that was we'd buy another property with a tenant in, but you've always got to look at your numbers first of all, make sure that it's going to spin. spin and it's got potential. And because you've got the rental income coming in, plus you're used to living lousy and you've got the excess that you would have been paying off your own house,
Yeah.
you can dump it into the loan of that second property until it's paid off. We've made a rule of never having a debt on a property for more than five years.
Just get in there and pay it off.
Just get in there and pay it off. And I mean, the other rents that you're accumulating helps to pay off other properties quicker. So,
yeah, no. So what I was going to say is, where did you get your education to do this? Or did you read a book on how to buy investment properties? And then, because the subject we were going to talk about was educating yourself to invest outside of podiatry.
So, definitely.
So we're younger podiatrists now who are starting to make some money, or even people that have been in podiatry for a while and they've been making good money. Where do they start educating themselves? And is all your investments mostly in real estate?
We've got a few shares as well, but mainly in real estate at the moment, both here and overseas. But I mean, the thing is that educating yourself, I mean, at the moment, you see so many of these get rich quick schemes on YouTube about, foreign currency exchanging, share trading, whatever. And when you dig into their videos, there's always a vice behind it, as far as the only way you can do this is to buy our software and subscribe to our system. You can't do it yourself, which is rubbish, because if you get well enough educated in other areas, I mean, you don't need to necessarily buy their system to make things work.
Oh, I totally agree. And I don't think there is any such thing as get rich quick.
No, of course not.
Like, you can get rich slow, and it's slow doesn't mean it has to take you 30 years, but you need to invest time. I think the big part is it's just like how you got your podiatry degree. There's not a get podiatry degree quick. You've got to do it over a methodical sort of number of years. And I think learning to invest is exactly the same thing. It's a process, and you get better the more that you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I used to do day trading on the stock market. I loved it, and I was actually I was pretty good at it. But it was one of those things that you constantly had to be at it. You didn't get a rest from it. And I did it for about 2 years and did well from it. But yeah, patience kept getting in the way. I kept having to treat people. And all of a sudden I'm looking at a share going, just hold on. Yeah, just wait another 2 hours. And all of a sudden a patient would come in. I'd treat them. Damn it, yeah. And at one stage, I used to have my, this sounds terrible, patient would be in front of me, but I had a big computer screen over my desk and the stock market would be there live while I was with the patient.
All those graphs.
Yeah, and every now and then you get a patient who knew what I was doing. So they were sort of going, go, have another quick look. And I go, I take this now. They go, buy it. So then you buy it. So I had a bit of fun, but it was very time consuming. I think real estate, the stock market's great. And I think real estate is long-term is good. Yeah,
it's good long-term, and it just spins without too much effort, basically.
Yeah. What made you decide to invest overseas?
Good story attached to that. As the boys got older, we wanted something that we can all do together. And so we used to love going skiing down south, down to Thredbo, Hotham Malden, every June school holidays.
Can I stop you for just 1 sec? I just want to, sorry for interrupting, but I want to point something out before you go any further. Earlier on, when you said, when you first bought your first house and you bought your first practice and you lived well within your means, the other benefit of doing that, not just so you can invest later, but also as you get older, you can then start taking some very cool trips because you've got the money behind you.
Yes. It's great.
Yeah. So it's, don't burn up all your money early. And then when you get older, you sort of, now I'm starting to pay off the house and try and invest later in life. It's be frugal at the beginning. And then surprisingly, it's not really that many years later that you can actually start enjoying the money. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, I know men I used to ride with a group of girls here in Toowoomba, bikes. Basically, we ride road bikes on the weekend, and they were all a little bit older than me. And with a couple of the girls I was riding with, which were medical specialists in town, they were like selling their houses to downsize so that they could afford to retire.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just a bit sad. But then they're also financially supporting their children that were well in their 20s because they thought they had to.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So go back onto your story. You were going skiing down south?
Down south, yeah. And then we decided to move the experience elsewhere. And so for about 3 years, we were skiing up at Niseko on the North Island of Japan.
How good is that? I should have my Niseko shirt on.
Yeah.
I bought a T-shirt that has the same shirt as this one I'm wearing now, but it has Niseko written across the front.
Yeah.
And beautiful place.
Oh, gorgeous. And then we sort of thought, oh, you know, wouldn't mind a bit of this action too. And there was this turnkey unit that was on the market for the equivalent of about 460,000 back then. That was about 13 years ago. And we thought, yep, that looks pretty good. It's been on the market for 6 months. When we're over there, we'll put an offer on it. So I think we put an offer for, I don't know, I think it was about 440,000 Australian. And then the guy that owned it came back and said, oh no, I won't sell it unless we get 480. And that was like, he'd been lagging till just before we were just about to come back home.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, basically bugger that for a joke. And we're speaking with friends that night, having drinks before we were just about to leave. And a guy was a real estate agent down in Brisbane, and he said that his business partner had just started investing in Hakuba, which is on the main island of Japan. And in his own words, he said, you can get twice the property for half the price. So we got home, Jude gets on the computer and has a look. Sure enough, there's a house over there and looks pretty good, 4-bedroom. Yeah. And it was about slightly less than half the price of what we were putting up over in Niseko. And so we found ourselves back on a plane within 2 weeks, and we had a look at this house and we bought it.
And that's a very popular ski area as well. Hey, yeah. Can I say, going back to Niseko, have you gone to the Frigidor?
No.
You can go to the Frigidor?
No, we haven't been there for about 14 years now.
Okay.
Now, but it's just an awesome place.
So then once you bought the first one, did you buy more overseas? Oh, you bought more.
Yeah. We bought more. We bought that, and actually that's an experience within itself. Because there's no use any women's livers going to Japan. It's a very male-dominated country financially. It was unusual that the property deeds are in joint names over there. I mean, I can't have a bank account over there. My husband can, but we're taken out to lunch before the actual transfer of the property. Before the property gets transferred over there, the actual agents who actually solicitors show you every fault with the property. So you go over there and you walk over the property, and they point out every fault the property has. And then we got taken out for lunch, and Perry left his reading glasses behind at the restaurant. And so we go down to the bank for the actual transfer of money to take place. And there's always little different coloured paper slips being handed around the table. And after a while, you realise that all these little paper slips of different colours is actually money transfers for things like stamp duty and the vendors' solicitors and all sorts of things. And they thought it was quite peculiar because Perry left his reading glasses at home, and so he couldn't read. So any piece of paper that came his way, he just handed to me to read. So because as part of their process, they do a translation in English as well. And so he got quite a few strange looks that he was giving me this authority to read these bits of paper.
So once you got through the first process of buying the property there, what made you decide to do it again a second time?
Oh, good value for money. Within 12 months of buying the house over there and fitting it out, because the house came out absolutely bare, not even a light bulb in it. So we made a few trips over to furbish the house with, curtains, furniture, everything.
Yeah.
And then the agent rings up one day and says the block of units next door is on the market. And at that stage, this block of little 8 Japanese units was on the market for slightly more than what we paid for this house, and so we end up buying these units. And the original plan was we'd use the top level for a more budget accommodation for snow bums during the winter season, and keep the bottom 4 units for the locals. With the first season, it became apparent that the locals didn't like the noisy ski bums above them,
Yeah.
and so we ended up just keeping it all for local rent, and it returns really, really well.
So during COVID, and there hasn't been as much travel, you still own the property in Japan. The house that you had, was that a struggle trying to rent that out over that period, or did it just sit there for a period of time?
It's funny because we rent it out rent the houses out during summer season as well. And now where we are is in the Japanese Alps, absolutely beautiful part of the world. And so during the summer, there's a lot of hiking. The locals go hiking. Also, a very, very big mountain biking scene there as well. Usually pre-COVID, if we were to rent out one of the houses for winter season, it would be like a 7-day minimum. But in summertime, it's more like a 3-day minimum, because a lot of people just get out of Tokyo to escape the heat and have a bit of a long weekend up in the Alps, basically.
Yeah. So who looks after it when you're in Australia? You got a property in Japan. Who looks after it for you?
We've got 2 different properties managers. We've got the units are managed by the local agency, which is Sakura Real Estate. But our houses over there, Desmond and Hero of Black Bear Properties, they manage them. This is a typical case of, particularly with property, you've got to know, like, and trust people.
Yeah.
We ran into Desmond once when just walking around our little area, and he was walking his dog Hannah, and Desmond says, there's quite a butch-looking guy from Yorkshire in England, and his story is that he's a retired architect that used to live in Tokyo, and his partner's Hero, who's a software engineer who does the engineering of the car manufacturing, all the computers that run the computers that do the car manufacturing. I mean, he's got some part of designing that sort of software. And they are just the most delightful gay couple you will ever meet in your life. They really are. They really are. I like Desmond because he is so picky. He's so particular about different things. Like, we've done renovations over there, and you'll come in with an idea, and he'll tell you definitely yay or nay if it's a good idea or if it's not.
It's true you said, though, about the whole know, like, and trust, especially when it comes to real estate and investing and people looking after your properties. Even a couple of weeks ago, my daughter and I, my daughter's 17, so for a bit of fun, we'd like going to look at open homes. We just find it interesting to have a look at other people's houses. So we were looking at this one particular house that was actually really nice. And then we were talking to the real estate guy, who I've known for a number of years. Not that we're friends on Facebook, we just sort of know each other from around town. And we were sort of just chatting away to him. And he actually said to us, "Yeah, are you in the market for looking at something?" And we said, "Well, actually, yeah, we are." And he said, "Oh, would you like me to come around and have a look at your place?" And I said, "Oh, that wouldn't be a bad idea." And then we left. And then even my daughter said, "Wow, he was such a really, really nice guy." And I said, "Yeah, it's the same." And when I got home, I said to my wife, if we were ever going to sell this house or do anything or even find another property, I said, he's the guy that I would go to, because he's just got that vibe about him that you know, like, and trust.
Yes.
And I think it's so important, because there's so many others that just make your skin crawl.
Oh, they can. Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, it's really funny. The little dog called Hannah was a little miniature dachshund that Desmond just absolutely adored, and we ended up naming one of the houses after Hannah the dachshund.
Yeah.
Hannah's house, which is next door to Sumi Villa, which is our original house. Yeah.
So with if there was a younger podiatrist coming through and they were listening to this, what would be your investment advice? Not so much investment advice, but education advice to learn more about investing. Where should they start?
Probably just buy, say, a money magazine from the news agency first of all, and just have a read through their articles. And there's a property investment one as well. That's quite good. You've got to sort of make up your own opinion and avoid anything that's got that little ad word on the top of the page. But there's lots of books that you can buy just from Demics or whatever as well. Well,
yeah. So one of your tips, what I've heard within that tip was, and you said it earlier on, avoid the people that are telling you that you can get rich quick.
Mm.
Follow my program. Give me $10,000 and I'll show you how to do this in 30 days. Yeah,
that's right. It's like tonight I'm going to a meeting. I'm part of a ladies in our investment group in which we pool money to buy shares. And it's part of the Better Investing group.
Yeah.
Group, which is an American group, and that's where we actually sit down and we follow a formula of to know if a share is a good price to buy or not. And there's quite definite parameters as far as not buying companies that are less than 5 years old, avoiding IPOs. It's definitely investing for the long term rather than speculatively.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice as well. I was told the same thing, that, well, it's up to you to set your criteria when it comes to buying and selling shares, what you're going to do. You know, some people say, don't buy a share under a certain price, under a certain number of years. What's the PE ratio? All these certain things that you can actually look for, but you've got to set your own rules and your own boundaries on what you feel comfortable with. I know with our super, when we were investing in certain things, when I was younger, I was prepared to take more of a risk because I thought if it failed, I've got time to come back from it. But as I've gotten older, I'm less risky because I'm thinking more, I don't have time on my side. So I've got to be a little bit more conservative. That's right.
And you've got to know your numbers. If it's property, if it's your practice, if you're going to buy a piece of equipment for your practice, you've really got to know your figures, know how many cycles you're going to have to take to pay it off, and if it's really something that you're going to use and to be able to get a profit out of.
Yeah. And I think even when you're talking about the get rich quick schemes, it's the same thing I think podiatrists have got to be aware of when you'll see different, like even coaching organizations saying, we can get you so many patients in so many days just by following our program. And it's like, for some people that may work, but for a lot of people, it may not work.
No, exactly.
To me, building a practice, there's foundational things like. I know right now I could go to any clinic, I could sit down with the owner for one day, and I know straight away that whatever the turnover was for the next month, we could make it 50% better or 60% better really, really fast. There's some really easy things you can do. And I've noticed a lot of some of the coaches that I hear spruiking all this stuff, that's all they're really doing is this quick win, this quick fix. But I think long term, it's foundations. You've got to build the foundations of your business and do these quick wins along the way. But without the foundations, the quick win will come and the quick win will go.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and you've got to remember why your long-term patients keep on coming to you, because they know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
Trust you as well. Well, and so it just works on just so many levels.
Oh, definitely. So before we finish up, and I told you we'd probably talk for about 30 minutes, but we're now about 45 minutes. Told you to go fast.
You did indeed.
I did, yes. And now you're calm, aren't you? Very relaxed.
Oh, thank you.
You sound very relaxed anyway. So before we finish up, have you got any final advice for whoever's listening to this about educating yourself, about investing, about maybe doing more study in podiatry? Anything you'd like to finish up with?
I think that you've got to always think about there must be an end point eventually. Like when I first of all graduated from QUT, we went out with no business sense whatsoever. Basically, we'd done a business subject in last year that wasn't that relevant, really. I think that you need to really spend time and treat your podiatry practice as a business plan to make it a business.
Yeah.
Business and to become educated in that early, early as well. You know, you've got a plan with an exit plan in mind, basically.
I think that is a fantastic final tip. So, Judi, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing your story, which I love it when people share their background, but also just sharing your wisdom around educating yourself and investing outside of podiatry. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure.